and welcome to an ETTO spoiler cast on The Mandalorian so far of Season 3. I'm going to keep saying all the words out of order. This is the most awake podcast you're ever going to get from us. We're so alert here.
I'm very alert. My house nearly flooded this morning.
It's true. You couldn't be more on edge. We're not going to really do any spoiler-free on this. It's the third season of a show. You're either watching it or you're not. But
not only is it the third season of a show, William.
Yeah.
It's the third season of a 40-year franchise.
Yeah, you're either on it or you're not. There's there's no win or lose here. We're going to be talking about the first 4 episodes. That's all that's out at this point. It's a nice halfway point. Might as well, up the top, check the temp. How you feeling on Season 3, or kind of Season 4, really, of The Mandalorian?
That's true. I'm pretty, I wouldn't say piping hot, but I'm pretty damn warm. You asked for temperature.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good.
I mean, I still think, and this is where we're going to differ, obviously, I still think Andor is like the best Star Wars I've seen in a while, but Mandalorian, it seems like it's finally hit what it wants to be. I think it started to get a bit more towards it in Season 2, and then in Season 3 now it's like, okay, we know what we are, we know why we exist within the Star Wars universe, rather than just trying to please whoever they want. They're like, enough people watch us now, we can just do random stuff that we want to do. And I think they're embracing that. They're embracing the campy side of Star Wars, which, again, going back to Andor we'll talk about, that didn't have as much of that, so it's nice to kind of go back to this weird, fun, schlocky 80s sci-fi kind of vibe for some of these. And yeah, I'm happy that the show's at a point where it's really kind of carving out its own niche. Pretty big niche, it seems, within the Star Wars universe. So that's my off the top thoughts.
Yeah, totally. I don't think I've got much else to add in terms of an overview. I'm kind of at the same point. I think it's just nice to have fun in Star Wars. Like you say, I wasn't as hot on Andor, but I came around to it in the end. But this feels like the Star Wars that I was missing every week during Andor. So it was nice. It's nice. I mean, the very first episode of this is the epitome of camp and silly, and just there's not. I think it's the worst episode of the season so far, just for how loose and wild it feels. But it was a nice wake up of like, oh yeah, that's what The Mandalorian is. It's the silly show, and it's like it's
just
the popcorn
double checking because it's been a morning. The first episode was the one with the pirates. Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
The apostate.
Totally, I agree.
Yeah. It was like such a journey of the checklist of everything that we're going to do this season. So it was like, Jesus Christ. I think I said to Josh, usually in The Mandalorian, he goes to one planet to get one thing, and that's it. And in that episode, it was like 9 different places. I was like, cool. But
that was I think I described it to someone that week that was the episode, like, because people compare Mandalorian to a video game a lot, video game quests. That's the episode where you realize you've been mainlining the main quest for ages. And so it's either you've been mainlining the main quest for ages, so you go and do a bunch of side quests, or you've been doing side quests for far too long, and you're like, hey, I need to progress the main quest.
Yeah, I need to tie these things up.
And it was a bit of both of those, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the pirates thing, maybe that's the main arc of the show. We don't know yet.
And wouldn't that be great?
Wouldn't it be good if Cabbage Guy came back? But yeah, I'm definitely well on board. The last night's episode, the Foundling, was very cool. It was, it's kind of... the show feels like... I'm going to say Doctor Who, but I'm sure it's more so like a Star Trek-y kind of thing in terms of how planet hopping it is. But it feels like the kind of show that I haven't really enjoyed in a long while, and it's nice. I still don't think the dialogue's very good.
No, it's really not.
Whenever someone talks, I'm like, oh God. Like in the last night's episode, I think they said, we can't use our jetpacks, it'll scare the bird like 9 times before they started climbing the cliff. And I was like, Jesus Christ, John, I know.
It was a bit better in the Coruscant episode.
Oh, for
that
sure.
felt a bit more like they'd put some effort into the dialogue there. But every time it's the Mandalorian like covert and the larger group, I'm just like, you are saying no words and all the words at the same time.
Which is such a shame because we've come off the back of The Last of Us where Pedro is putting in just an incredible performance. And, you know, he's only got the voice here, but the lines he's been given are sometimes just like, he's so robotic.
Do you think it's because of this whole helmet thing and the fact that they think because people can't see the face, they need to say it over and over again? Because they don't. But, like, I kind of think that's maybe what it is. They're like, well, no one can read emotion or anything, so we just need to really hammer home what we're doing.
But not the objectives. We get the objectives, surely.
Totally.
Yeah, potentially. Potentially it's weird writing. It's weird that it's gotten worse. I feel like I didn't notice it as much in the first couple of seasons, but...
it is a little bit why when some people I see right on Twitter go like, The Mandalorian just isn't a good show, I'm like... Well, I disagree with you, but I really can't, like, say you're wrong.
Totally, yeah. I mean, we'll come back around to the other stuff, but we might as well talk about the Carson episode, which is the most divisive so far of, I think, anything Mandalorian. I don't know anything Disney Star Wars apart from the sequel films. I feel like it's the biggest. The episode obviously diverts very quickly from the Mandalorian main story, at least from what we can tell. I don't doubt that it'll come back to what we learnt in the episode, but going from one of the most pivotal moments, which is Din bathing in the mines of Mandalore, to just a completely separate story, it's for some reason terrified people. Like, I saw some tweets after the fact, they're like, oh, well, I guess that's the Mandalorian show's over now, this is it. It's like, why don't you understand that this is like a once-off, we need to tell this thing for the next thing to make sense? And also, even if it did do that, wasn't it a good episode that you enjoyed?
It was a good time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it was super interesting. We've talked a bit about this since, but I think one of the things that I personally loved about that episode was, as you said, a lot of people kind of seemed to come to it and were like, what is this random story that seemingly has no relevance to the rest of the plot? And I'm like... Yeah, it does. Like, what? There's an overarching plot of this show that's been going on for 2 seasons now that, like, you were not aware of.
It was literally like, for me, it's been the plot of the show outside of Din is what is Grogu for, and like the first 3 episodes of the show ever were about Pershing having him to get DNA from. So it's like when it went to this, I was like, oh, cool, we're coming back around. It wasn't like, we're going over here. It's like, oh, we're pulling that thread back into the show. Yeah. Because season 2 wasn't about it at all. So,
and yes, totally, the argument is there. Why are they trying to explain the worst part of the sequel trilogy? But at the same time, that's what the Filoni and Favreau show does best. That's what Clone Wars was. Yep. It was explaining the worst parts of the prequel trilogy into something that now makes a lot of sense and actually makes the prequel trilogies better. And I'm not saying episode 9 is ever going to be a good film to watch, because I don't think it will be. But I think it's like, I think you just got to like accept that they're trying and just go along for the journey. And, you know, maybe they won't pull it off, but like, I really like... I appreciate that they're at least going for it and at least trying to explain this super convoluted thing in Star Wars that makes absolutely no sense, because most things are super convoluted in Star Wars, make no sense. But I like the ways they try and explain it all to us.
Totally. And I mean, it also just flat out felt like a Clone Wars episode. Like, there's episodes of Clone Wars where it's like, oh, who the fuck are you? And it was just, and they were always really fun episodes. So
it's been great watching this alongside Bad Batch, as Bad Batch is gone, and actually a lot of the through lines in the Bad Batch season are about cloning and post Clone Wars cloning processes with the Empire and stuff. So it almost feels like, I'm not sure if this was intended that they were ever supposed to release alongside each other, but the stories do feel like they're kind of working in tandem.
Totally.
To tell an overarching cloning story of how we got from Camino clones to episode 9 Palpatine wizard clones. And I think, like, you know, that's, again, I think it's bold of them to attempt to explain it all, but like, I appreciate it. It was very funny. I watched a video after I watched the episode last night of it was one of those like YouTube videos of real big Star Wars nerds trying to explain like how all this cloning stuff ties together. And even now I was like, all right, this all sounds a little bit stupid.
Yeah.
But I'm along for the ride. I'm locked in. I'm ready to go.
Well, I keep thinking with when they, take these massive swings, I'm always like, well, my parents are watching, and I think they know that like, there is a different audience watching this than to Clone Wars or something. Like, I feel like they're conscious of that, because as much as there's these big lore dumps and stuff like that, it never feels difficult to understand. Like the Mines of Mandalore thing, they lay out so much of Mandalore's lore just for dialogue. It's not really shown or anything, but it's not difficult.
They went up to a plaque like 2 minutes before and read the entire lore
the history
of Mandalore.
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's all very clear. So I hope whatever crazy things they try and do,
I feel like that's maybe why the Pershing Coruscant episode didn't land, was because it wasn't as clear, and people had kind of forgotten about that because we hadn't really talked about the cloning stuff for a season or so.
The previously on, even for me, was like, I'm not caught up. I was like,
the only reason
it gave me much.
The only reason it clicked so hard in my head was because before this season, I managed to rewatch the whole first season. I didn't watch any of the second season, but I'm actually glad that I could at least get through the first season because I remembered so little of it. Yep. So I had that like Pershing, like cloning story fresh in my head. So I think it's interesting that particular part of the show hasn't hit with so many people because I loved it. If anything, it's like maybe one of my top episodes of the show because Din and Grogu are great, but they're boring as hell sometimes. And I actually just really loved this side story of like what happened post Return of the Jedi and like how these, like this idea of the amnesty program and like the idea of Coruscant just like still being corrupt all these years later, no matter who's in charge, no matter what's going on. Like the rich people just don't care. And I mean, that's a very clear allegory for real life. I adored, especially watching it so close to Andor, the rich people that come up to Pershing. I'm like, you could have been in Andor. Like, no matter the government, you're exactly the same. The only reason they wouldn't have been in Andor was because they were aliens.
That's true. We can't have aliens in Andor.
No, but totally. And I think, just seeing like the people in the amnesty program talk about like what was good about the Empire and stuff, and like we all know the Empire was bad, but having them like bond over like particular little elements of it and stuff, I think is really nice and like adds humanity to Empire characters in a way that is not necessarily. I think what people want sometimes, and Star Wars sometimes falls into the habit of, is trying to humanize the bad guys too much.
Yes.
And really be like, oh, but look, they're doing it for a reason and that kind of thing. And it's like, no, these people are fascists.
Yeah.
But I really like, this is trying to humanize them in just a way of like, well, we know what we were doing was pretty damn bad, but like, think about all these cool little bits of stuff we got to do.
It's not humanizing, but it's finding the human in them. Like, it's not. Yeah,
totally.
It's not making them the good guys. But I quite liked it. I think I read it. There's so many fucking Star Wars books, but I think I read Alphabet Squadron from memory, and that was very much about that program. So it was cool to have that brought in as well.
Oh, cool. I didn't even know it was a pre-existing thing, but it makes a lot of sense.
And they kind of, the only problem with the show is that the program in the book was kind of set up that if you left before the Battle of Jakku, they were kind of kinder to you because they're like, oh, you understood what you did. But if you left after the Battle of Jakku, they're kind of like, come on, guys, you could have left earlier. So the fact that these two characters were kind of treated nicely kind of contradicts the things because it's so deep into the New Republic. That's books.
Whatever,
that's Star Wars books.
Should we talk about some other parts of the season?
We should.
That was one episode, but like there's been
the rest
a lot.
of the show, which has mainlined the Mandalorian side of the show, which is cool.
It's really mainlined it. It's to the point where I don't know what's going to happen now.
No, and I mean, just really. I don't think there's anything left in the trailers they've shown us. I can't think of a shot that I haven't seen, which is very exciting.
I was thinking about this last night. It's honestly really nice, especially with a show like a Star Wars show or a Marvel show where you and I are so up in the zeitgeist of it that like we often have an idea of what's going to happen next. But like I went to bed last night and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. Like,
It's really
I don't know
cool.
what could happen next week. And,
Yeah.
like, I have a vague idea of, like, Bo kind of, like, joining with the covert and stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe creating a new group of Mandalorians, but that's, like, the extent to which I can really, like, draw the links in my head. And I think that's nice that there's an element of surprise about what's coming with the show. Because I think most of us thought most of the season was going to be them getting back to Mandalore, and 3 episodes in, we were there.
Well, Ep 2 was all about the mines of Mandalore.
2 episodes,
Yeah, just the second episode they went.
Yeah.
And it had a good reappearance of Peli Motto, who I'm so glad I like. Like, I remember just avidly being like, ugh, every time she was on screen in season 1. And then I don't know what happened. But between seasons, she just became one of the best characters in the show. So it was nice to have a quick stop in.
I think it's something to do with, again, watching season 1 back now.
Yeah.
The show took itself a lot more seriously in season 1, and she was not serious at all. That entire episode was not serious.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of... I think when we got into season 2, started to see her more, and like in Book of Boba Fett, she fit more into the vibe of the show.
The show had found its place.
Yeah.
I think the weirdest thing is how prominent R5 is in this show. I don't understand.
Can we talk about the first episode and the fact that he's like, I need the chip from this droid. I need to fix IG because it's the only droid I trust, and like we have the little Babu Frick. It was fun.
Was great.
It was like fun. Whatever, it's enjoyable. But literally the next episode just doesn't matter.
Yeah, she's like, do you want an astromech? Forgot. Like comparative to an assassin droid or an astromech, and he's like, yeah, that'll do. It's like, no, it won't. No, it won't. Very strange.
But yeah, no. I mean, it's very funny to me that this R5 droid, which I think most people think is clearly the R5 droid from all the way back in A New Hope, that is now has such a big role in it, and that is one of the bits that I'm like, this feels fan servicey in a way that almost I don't like.
But it kind of it's fine.
But it's also fine, and it's also kind of funny, and like they've given the droid a good personality, so I can't be too mad about it. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I when she went back there and they showed the BD droid again, I'm like, fucking take the BD droid to you.
Yeah, I know, right?
That'd be sick.
It's such a cool little droid. They could do so much.
Maybe one day. I mean,
Maybe.
I still believe that the BD droid even being in this show is just set up for Cal at some point in the future.
Please.
From the games. But yes, we mainline Mandalore. We got to see what Mandalore looked like after the bombings. Looked very cool. I think it's the best volume work we've ever seen. That section of the episode was
totally. I think
insane.
And again, going back to season 1 and looking at the volume in that, now that we've had a lot more media with the volume since then, that still, even though it was the first thing, it still does it the best.
Yeah.
And kind of this show coming back and knowing it's still largely showing the volume. I think there's a bit more practical set work going on than there was, probably because they have a larger budget and stuff. But it really shows how like they know how to use this technology more than anyone else has used it since. And yeah, that whole episode was really just shining that. Because I think it's a lot about how they frame the shots. And the thing about the volume that we often rag on is it's a lot of people walking in straight lines that it's very immediately obvious, or walking on the spot.
The Coruscant episode was very much like, I see the volume.
Yeah, totally.
Which, like, it served its purpose in that, but it is a lot of walking. And it's like, I know there's a treadmill below your feet.
Whereas there's good camera tricks and stuff I think that are done when you're with Mando and when you're with Grogu that kind of help to sell it a little bit more. I also love the visual language of Mandalore, despite it being absolutely bombed to shit, like, goddamn, it was still there. Like, as someone who's watched Clone Wars and has like watched, like, I love the Mandalore stuff in those seasons. I think being able to like look at this and visibly be like, I can see.
I remember that city.
This originally was. Like above ground. I mean, above ground it was just empty, and now it's not. And now it's all rocky and stuff. So that's not too hard. But like actually seeing the city and being like, no, this is the same city. Like I can see what's going on here.
Yeah,
it was very cool.
I love the idea that the bombs crystallize the city as well. Sure.
Totally.
Like, that's sick.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I was always thinking about it. I was like, sand. They always talked about glassing, right? And I was like, I thought it was just a phrase, because I think it is a phrase in Star Wars that they use for a bunch of stuff when they use their like glassing cannons.
Yeah.
But it's funny that on Mandalore it actually made everything into glass because everything was sand and that stuff, and I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Lots of cool little monsters in that episode and across the whole show so far, but especially in that episode. I can't remember the names of the Mandalorian ones.
Yeah. But my dad was very upset because they looked a lot like the Time Machine monsters in the movie The Time Machine. Which only he's seen. He's seen it, so he loves that movie so much. But I've never heard him grumble and just be like, they look like they've stolen those. Yeah. I'm like, all right.
Totally. I loved whatever the heck that weird little spider guy was.
So sick. So cool.
And it's hard to tell how much of that was practical and stuff and digital. It felt like a decent mix of both, but the way it moved, the way it like, I don't know, all its little bits and pieces and mix of like technology and organic stuff. I thought that I was like, it was this weird kind of, it was almost alien-esque, I feel like, in its horror in that episode. It was nowhere near scary, but it felt genuinely like threatening and like
totally.
I was really impressed at that random ass character that I don't think we'll ever see come back. I mean, it's pretty dead now.
But it felt like how Star Wars, and I mean Mandalorian is built on it, but like how the first three movies introduce things like that, and they're like, when you're never going to see this again, and then it's like the Tusken Raiders, which of course now we have lore for, but like at the time it was just like, what the fuck is that thing?
So we're gonna get lore for Spider Guy.
Give it 10 years and they'll come back to his home planet.
I mean, there were people who were like, it's Grievous, and I'm like, all right,
come on now.
Come on.
No, I thought it was creepy, and like, you know, they're never going to kill Din. Sorry, B-Mac. No. I just don't see it happening. But I felt general peril for him when it's like sucking his blood out. I was like, Jesus Christ.
That was the most terrifying thing I've seen in a Mandalorian episode. He was like, his blood was getting drained out of him.
Yeah, totally.
It was scary. I also thought there was going to be more of a big deal with the fact that he got disarmed with the Darksaber and then Bo picked it up and used it. And in my eyes, Bo had just defeated the new owner of it, right?
Yeah.
But then they were like, nah,
nothing to do with it.
I feel like that was an easy like swap over that I thought what they were going to do, and
that she could pull him up on. I mean, we should talk about Bo, who's kind of taken basically protagonist status of the show, because Din's journey is seemingly over. Like, he's home now. I'm sure they'll find something new for him to do, but his quest, he gave Grogu back. That kind of resolved. He has bathed in the mines. He's come back. He's good. It's really about her now, and like where she wants to lie in terms of Mandalorian, Night Owl. Also just lovely to have her in the show more. Like,
it's so good. Katie Sackhoff is a delight. I feel bad for her that she has to wear a helmet all the time now. And it's the kind of thing when in this most recent episode where they have the bit where they all take off the helmets and she's sitting by the fire and she takes it off. And I feel like her face in that moment was a little bit of acting and a little bit of like, oh, thank God.
I don't know for certain. I don't know how people's faces work, but it actually felt like they maybe de-make-upped her. Like, she felt not rough, that's not the word, but she felt like what we imagine Mandalorians to look like, because it's like, I never have to show my face. Why would I make sure it's anything?
Totally.
So I love that sequence. It's also very funny, the idea that like if they all got McDonald's, they'd all have to like find a hole and just like eat their Maccas in a hole.
It was such a like, you don't need to explain this, but I love that you did, because
totally.
We always see Din like eating under his helmet, and then,
when she asked him, I'm like, you literally gave him some soup like 2 weeks ago, and he just kind of lifted his mask up and had a little sip. Weird. But no, it's awesome. It's also awesome that, like, you know, there's no way Pedro Pascal has been in the show yet. Like, it's been his body doubles. But I like that Katie is obviously on set the whole time. Like, it apart from stunts and whatever, but it's like, it's nice to have a protagonist that is there, and voice and performance is
Yeah, her body
one-to-one.
language is really clearly her, and I think that's maybe something they don't nail with Din as much. With obviously, they're like swapping people out a bit more, but I think they
for the most part.
There's a language there, but I think it's really clear with Bo. I think also because Bo is the most. I mean, she's from an animated show, and she's clearly the most like animated show character of the bunch.
Like she's talked about the fact that she's based it off the show, and like when she walks up alongside Din when they're doing the training sequence, I'm like, are you CGI? Like she moves her and in a great way because it matches what we know of Bo and what we remember of her. But she's totally like one-to-oneing the performance, which is sick.
She's walking alongside all these Mandalorians with their random ass, just like single color armor pieces and stuff, and she's got this massively ornate like painted outfit and stuff. I was a little bit sad when she got the new pauldron and it wasn't blue, and I was like,
don't push her into a Beskar outfit. Let her be cool, man. But I'm intrigued to know where her journey is. I think there's the path of she makes a new sect within everything, but I'm also like, I'm not 100% trusting. I feel like there's, they've definitely taken her away from the antagonist that she kind of was in the first episode, but I feel like there's potential for her to still be like, something will go wrong within the Mando cult, and she'll be like, actually, I'm going to grab that Darksaber back and
I mean, she's not a perfectly black and white character in the animated shows either. She's like very much is swapping sides a bunch and unsure where she stands. And I can see, you can still see the conflict in her, which I think is cool. There's also, they're giving the Wiesler guy a lot of time.
They are. When he finally said my son, I'm like, thank God. Like, I really thought they were going to hold on to that as a reveal. And when he's dumb fucking Jimmy Kimmel's son gets taken off by the dumb bird, and he's like, that's like the 6th time this month. It's like, move! Fucking move, man! Like,
part of me is like, why are they on this planet that has these giant ass alligators and these giant raptors that are clearly stealing all your kids and eating them? There's like leftover helmets.
Yeah, when they get to the nest. Yeah.
Like, why? Like, surely, I know you had to leave Navarro and maybe this is the only planet left, but surely there was like better.
It's gotta be somewhere else, man. Just go somewhere else. It's weird. I don't know what more we're getting from him as a character. Jon Favreau.
He's giving so much. They're giving him so much screen time, and I always watch stuff with captions these days, and he's so clearly captioned as a Wiesler. All the time. It's not just Paz, it's Paz Wiesler.
Paz Wiesler, yeah.
And I'm like, all right,
sure.
You can do something with that.
Yeah.
Because for those who aren't aware of the animated shows, the Wieslers kind of the evil family within the Mandalorian culture. It's a bit confusing because who is good and who is evil in Mandalorian culture goes back and forth. But the Wieslers were the one that overthrew Bo-Katan's family and that kind of thing, and so there's definitely a conflict there. So the fact that they're all kind of getting along well at this point is, I'm not so certain.
Yeah, maybe it is just an entire uprising within it all. Like it's all just gonna crumble and Mando or Din and Bo will be like, what do we do? But again, we don't know. We know nothing, which is really cool.
We know nothing. While we're on Bo and the Mandalorians, I guess we should talk about the Mythosaur and the Raptors, which I feel like there's like. So the law with the Mythosaurs is that like the Mandalore himself, I can't remember the names of all these. Mandalore himself used to ride one, or it's like the they all used to ride Mythosaurs. And they're clearly like, they've got these things now that I feel like they're clearly going to ride on top of that are vaguely dinosaur-esque. And I'm like, there's some kind of symbolism going on here.
There's something happening. I hope so. Otherwise, because when they just stumbled out, I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you here? It genuinely just felt like the goat scene in Love and Thunder when they rock up. You're like, no, go away.
Literally. It was this thing of like, because they brought as soon as they were like, we brought some foundlings back, I was like, they brought the birds back. But then I watched it happen, and I was just kind of like, what's happening here?
It was a weird perspective shot, because they're fucking chickens. When they're all standing around it, it looks like they shot actual, like, baby chickens and just scaled them up. Like, it was really confronting. Totally. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's where we're headed. I mean, I hope it's not the end of the Mythosaur. I like that Bo was like, hey, totally. I saw this thing, and the armorer's like, yeah, right. Like, good on you.
It's interesting. I honestly like what they're doing with the armorer. I thought she was a pretty one-dimensional character up until now, but I like her acting as this kind of guide for and it's like, it's more believable now that there's more Mandalorians about, and like Grogu's learning to be a Mandalorian, which we'll get to. But I more believably see her in this mentorship kind of role, and as a really knowledgeable like leader of these people. And having that conversation was so interesting, because it was like, she was kind of like, yeah, right, but at the same time she was kind of like, if you saw it, like, I believe you saw something. Like, it's not just in what way you saw it is the thing we're unsure about. And I think it's super interesting. I also hope the Mythosaur comes back. I think it was a very cool reveal for big old Star Wars nerds. And I think I'm kind of fascinated to see in what capacity it does come back. If it just stays this kind of mythical thing, or if they do just go really bombastic with it and have them literally fly on a Mythosaur and to what though is interesting. It's like, what's the end of this? I mean, it might not be this season, it might be a future thing, but it's like, I don't know what the threat is, because totally. And that's the other thing, you can't at this point, I'm like, well, you can't really take Mandalore back, because like you could, but what are you taking back?
What is there? Yeah, totally. I don't know. And then we haven't seen Moff Gideon in a while. It's like, is he still relevant? Is he still important to this story? Because it feels like you've cast Giancarlo, and the motherfucker won't shut up about Mandalorian. It's like, he wasn't a one-off. We defeated the Imperial guy. Like, he's up to something. And there's also always people like, maybe he was once a Mandalorian, so maybe that comes into play.
There was this super interesting thing. Interesting. It was funny in the first episode where I think Carl Weathers' character. What's Carl? I can never remember his name.
Grief Cargo.
Grief Cargo. That's it. That's it. This is such a nothing name. Grief Cargo is talking to Mando, and they like, again, talking about how that episode was just them covering like all the exposition, doing all the main storyline bits in one go. Grief Cargo was like, oh yeah, he went to a New Republic War Tribunal, and Mando scoffs in a way that is just like so clearly the audience. It's like, totally. No one believes anything's going to come out of that.
No. And I mean, in the same breath was also like Cara Jones with the space police, and it's like, cool, man. Totally. Sure, she's gone.
But I'm keen to see if he comes back in some kind of way. Just fascinated to see what the Mandalorians do. It was very cool to see them all flying in their jetpacks fighting together in this episode. I think that was awesome. But as you said, I'm kind of like, what is there for you to do? Unless you're like, unless they're like actively joining the Resistance, and that becomes like their thing, which doesn't seem
feel
quite
like
right.
Thing.
Then like, I'm like, where do you go now? What is this show? That's the thing I keep coming back to, is like, what's left? Because I felt like this was the story plotline that was going to kind of follow through for like till the end of like season 4 even. And it's like,
we're done.
I mean, as I said, I'm kind of excited by it, but at the same time, I'm like, what's going on?
I do wonder if, like, I mean, I know John and Dave have been like, we're not done. Like, we're going to do Mandalorian forever. Like, we have no end point for the show. But I also do wonder when the name The Mandalorian goes away, because it feels like everything they've done now, at least post season 2, is setting up and moving towards the Ahsoka and Thrawn and everything Rebels. Of course, we got the space whales in episode 1, which was gorgeous. So cool. Like, it feels like maybe the cap on this is the Mandalorian Society is uniform again, and they're ready to help in the war against Thrawn. Like, they don't necessarily join the Resistance, but they are ready to fight in that battle.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. I kind of forgot about Thrawn's existence. But no, that makes a lot of sense. It's him kind of being this like ancillary big bad that they fight against.
This is the real sequel trilogy.
And we're just in their little separate universe of Filoni and Favreau. which is now the main universe.
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah, we got skeleton crew and stuff. And just like quickly as well, we got Grogu training to be a Mandalorian.
So silly.
It's so dumb. It's also like when they set up the premise of the fight that he has with Jimmy Kimmel's nephew. They set up.
Is it actually Jimmy Kimmel's nephew?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's big old Nepo time.
Yeah.
There's literally an interview with, I think, Jon Favreau, and Favreau's like, yeah, we chose him because he has like great like martial arts training, and it was really cool to have him. And Kimmel goes, did he tell you he has martial arts training? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, there's no way he has martial arts training. And it's like, cool. But yeah, they set up that it's going to be the little gauntlet fight, and then Mando's like, do a flip, and it's like, hang on a second, that's not how this goes down.
It's so silly, man. I just love I love how stupid he looks when he does the flip.
It's so dumb.
I don't know what it is about it, but
it's a static puppet just doing full 180s and just
yeah, there's not even any articulation to it or anything. Nah. There's not even any sideways movement. It's just over the top.
Yeah.
And it's just not even that well shot.
No, it always looks silly, which is fine. It is silly.
And I'm waiting for the moment this kid finally talks, and we're just like, this is not right.
I don't want this. Yeah. I mean, his first words will be, this is the way. There's no world in which that isn't it.
I mean, he's basically already saying it. He's saying like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if Moff Gideon or whoever the big bad is in the, he's going to shoot Grogu in the chest, and no one but us will know he has a plate there. Because he got his little, like, it's set up now. They're going to do a fucking good, the bad, and the ugly bullshit thing of, like, Mando and him will be in, like, Mando and whoever will be in, like, a gunfight, and then they'll, like, pew! And instead of shooting Mando, the guy will have shot Grogu, and the camera will be like, oh no. But they'll never address the chest plate again until that moment, and we'll be like, oh no. Like,
there's so many things
It's fucking show, man.
Moment. So it was cool when I noticed earlier on in the episode the little like chainmail thing was underneath his. I was like, that's a nice little note. But then the more and more they went into the armory and I could tell she was making something for him, I was like, what is this going to look like? And the fact that it's just a circle.
It's just a disc.
I was like, this is the most comical way you could have possibly done this.
Yeah.
I understand maybe they're scared of giving us like the actual like body shape of what these weird Yoda creatures are.
Yeah.
But like, they're not a circle.
No. It's weird. And it's weird that...
and it's a big circle.
It's a massive circle.
I was thinking... it weirds me out that I was even thinking about this, but I was thinking about this as I go to sleep last night. Like, surely its body isn't that... Like, that's a wide body.
Yeah.
For a small creature. Surely it isn't that wide.
And she also says, you'll grow into it. I'm like, I don't think he will. That's just very big.
Yep, totally.
Also confronting is when she disrobes him. And because I have the Sideshow statue of it, I'm like, no one's ever supposed to see that. No one's ever supposed to see that thing opened like that. That's exactly. Fucking...
Exactly. And part of me was like, is he just going to hang around with his thing half open all the time?
That's what I thought too, yeah. I was like, is this the new look?
I like, they could have put it over the top, right? Like,
yeah. Totally. But that's why it's going to be a thing later. It's like...
And my other thing was like, give him some straps.
Yeah.
I understand most of the Mandalorian armor doesn't have straps, but they at least look like they believably like on them somehow. This was just like...
just hanging there.
There. And it wasn't even flat. It was like...
Yeah. There's so many weird things about it. It also just means the armorer looked at him and went, I can't make anything specifically for you. I don't know what to do. I'm going to make a fucking disc.
We probably should briefly touch on the little flashback
we
had in that moment, which I know you're not a big fan of flashbacks, but I feel like this one was pretty
I'm going to let this one pass.
We got Ahmed Best, famous for playing Jar Jar Binks, finally get to do something good in the Star Wars universe.
Amazing.
And it was a good performance.
It was great.
Like, it's a cool little character.
Yeah. Obviously also canonizing the weird Jedi Trials YouTube series. The Naboo guys say the same Jedi Master name, so it's the guy that did that show. Yeah, it was cool. It was when like genuinely, because we'd all assumed it was Mace Windu when it opened and it was just darkness and I couldn't really tell. I was like, no, fuck no. Oh, good. It's Ahmed Best. I feel so happy.
Totally.
Like, because I think leading up to this, we were like, it's gonna be someone. Like, it's gonna be an annoying, in-your-face cameo. And to make it, and I think kind of said it on Twitter, to make it an actor who through the community we have feelings about and, you know, have wanted so much for him, to make it a character and an actor that is now so filled with hope being the thing that saves Grogu, is like, there's so much symbolism to it that they didn't need to do. Like, it could have been like, when he runs to the thing and puts him in the pod and whatever, like, he could have died and it could have been literally anyone else and it wouldn't have mattered. But he also survives. Like,
no, I genuinely hope it's not the end of him. Like, I don't know when canonically that weird YouTube series is supposed to be set, but I hope that we see more of him, because it's not like it was even like a cameo where I was like, oh, it's nice he finally got his thing. Like, he was genuinely like
a character.
This character was believable and stuff, and like clearly quite powerful.
Totally.
Also just it was nice to have a slightly longer period in Coruscant around like that time in this show, like getting a bit more live action Coruscant during that period, because we've had flashes of Order 66, but it's always felt like they haven't really, like, I've always been like, oh, you remember this thing? But it was nice to have a slightly more extended period of that and see that setting shot with a bit more nuance and a bit more skill than the prequel trilogy ever was.
At the same time, I feel like both this sequence and the other episode was almost intentionally shooting it a little bit like George did.
Oh, totally.
Like, it was a little bit CG heavy in a way that I'm like, Mando and anything really strays away from it. And I liked it, because it kind of, it definitely...
It feels like Coruscant
is the CGI planet,
The one thing I do love is that they made a point to go back to the top of that mountain in the chase sequence afterwards. They're like, we've got to reuse this set. Because I know for a fact that one's an actual set. That
cool.
And they were like, nah, we got
to use it again. And it totally is so funny, because I remember last week a lot of Clone Wars fans are like, oh my God, it's cool that we got to see it in live action for once. And it's like, oh, it's back again. It's like,
totally.
Not special anymore. Also, the clones are voiced by Tamara Morrison, which was sick.
Oh, yeah, very cool.
Like, I mean, I know it's obvious we've had him in it and he's played a clone, but so close to the Bad Batch where we're used to hearing that D. Bradley Baker's version of it, hearing the clones run and they sound like Jango Fett was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what they're supposed to do. Like,
totally.
That's
And I like that Tamara Morrison clearly also has those multiple different versions of the clones that he can play, in the way that D. Bradley Baker, again, we'll talk about Bad Batch at another point, I'm sure. I need to talk about Bad Batch.
We're only 2 episodes off. We can do it full.
Yeah, totally. But D. Bradley Baker just is insane. Like, I don't understand how he comes up with so many voices, but I also don't understand how he maintains all the voices.
Totally.
And so, like, Tamara Morrison, I'm not ever expecting him to do that same level, but, like, the fact that there's a few different voices you hear there is kind of nice. It's nice that all these years later, he's, like, kind of like Ahmed Best, he's still getting his due and stuff.
It's him, Hayden Christensen and Ahmed Best. It's like, it's cool that this show has let them have a place. My batshit theory with the flashback, they go to Naboo. Where's Jar Jar Binks? It's like we have 2 Ahmed Best characters on screen at once.
Oh my God. I like, at this
that
point,
would be cool.
At this point I want it. And a lot of people don't want it.
Nah, I don't care.
But at this point, Mando is so silly, and like that weird pirate lord in the start showed me that the show can do it and it just be okay. Yeah. And it's like, it would be lovely to see them go to Naboo and just had some weird Gungans in it. But like, I want to see what 2023 Gungans look like. Totally. I want to see like how it could maybe work within the Star Wars universe now.
Imagine if next week is a filler episode of them on like the flashback is the full episode next week. I imagine if that's where we're headed, that would be sick. That would be cool.
Man, wouldn't that be great? And isn't it great that we don't know?
We don't know anything. To the start,
it's nice to not know. And we'll probably do another one of these when the season wraps up and we do know. Yeah. But it's nice, I love it, to be halfway through the season and just, I'm along for the ride. Yeah. And I haven't felt along for the ride in a little while. It's nice.
Totally. I think that's the biggest thing is some of the things that people are coming up against is that they love knowing what the series arc is and they love knowing where they're headed. And I don't think you need to. I think that, you know, we've been so handheld with so many shows that are like that. And they're generally good shows, but this is not that show. It's also never been that show. Like, this has always been, I mean, from this season less so, but it had always been like an anthology little like side story show that had a very clear arc, and that's what people have latched onto. This time, it's a very thin arc, but a very centralized show. And I think people are confused by that, and
I think
hopefully
it's
they
also,
come around to it.
we're also just in an era of people watching TV where they know the story and stuff. And we've got Marvel shows galore. We've got Last of Us. We've got all these like prime top tier, like high budget shows that people vaguely know what the plot is going to happen. And I think people have forgotten that TV wasn't always like that.
No.
Similar to the filler episode whole thing. I'm like, my thing with that at this point is I'm just like, you guys do realize TV, that's what TV is.
Yeah.
Like a TV season has episodes which don't progress the main plot hugely sometimes, and it's fine.
Which Bad Batch has because it's like 18 episodes long. This show doesn't because it's a story. There's no filler. I mean, season 1 has filler, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no. But I'm like, even if you consider the Coruscant episode as filler, like, isn't it okay that 1 hour of a 10-hour TV show is a bit around the place? Like, I think that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. No, love it.
Anyway, it'll be interesting to see how the wider sentiment kind of plays out as the rest of the season goes on. We'll kind of find out. Maybe, hopefully, they bring that like cloning story a bit back in more. But I'm
loving it. I hope people come around to it because I think it's really fun. I also think that we live in such a fucking Twitter world that there's so many opinions that we see online that we assume everyone has, but they don't. Like, the wider sentiment doesn't live on Twitter and Reddit. Like, that is such a small portion of the audience. And so...
Yeah, look, when I say wider sentiment, fully acknowledge that it's...
it's just the internet.
Still a small little bit. And I like, you watch this with your parents or your dad, both your parents?
Both parents, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And it's like... I'm sure for many people like that, I used to watch this with my parents as well when I lived at home, and like, it's just cool Star Warsy stuff for them, and like that's fine. And I think people can engage with this and get different things out of it. And I think the fact that people are still engaging with it and getting different things out of it is really cool. Yeah, it means that it's working as a premise.
There's nothing wrong with you not liking a Star Wars thing.
And like, I feel like I said this to you a couple of weeks ago, but I feel like Star Wars is succeeding at the moment where Marvel is really struggling, and Star Wars is succeeding at catering to multiple audiences at once without feeling like it's overwhelming, whereas Marvel is just like it's either one or the other, and neither is that good.
Hopefully things change, but it's very exciting. We'll see where the series ends up. What did you guys think? If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a couple of comments down below on where you're at with the show. I know opinions are flying on this thing, so let us know. But if you want to see more of us and you aren't seeing our faces, you can head to etto.card.co, double R in the card, and it's got our TikToks and our YouTubes and all those places. But if you're here and you don't want to see our faces ever again, you can go to an audio-based platform and type in Etto's Catch Up, and you'll find a podcast filled to the brim of Shazams, of Last of Us, that you guys talked about the other day.
Making lots of things. We're talking about lots of things. I'm enjoying things. Yeah. Things are great.
It's good fun.
It's good fun.
But until the next time we have fun, which is hopefully later today, but just like in terms of the next time we have fun for you. I've been Will.
I've been Ben. Have fun today.
Yeah, have fun today.